Hello, today we are going to deal with Frankenstein, Romanticism and Mary Shelley. Due to you have chosen this book to read this week, I think it's a very interesting option. You have chosen a very interesting author. Remember that women in general are often invisible, and in 19th century, that is Frankenstein's time, women were invisible too, very, very invisible. So it's very important to have it in mind. And of course, I personally love this author. It is one of my favorite authors in English literature. And this period is great. Okay, it's very different from Spanish Romanticism. Okay, Spanish Romanticism is more idealized, and Romanticism in England is, I don't know how to express it, but it's very different. It's deeper than Spanish. Okay, authors are more vulnerable. They write from the inner, and they are not so romantic in the sense of love and death and all this kind of Spanish thing. Okay, they are deeper than Spanish authors. Okay, so Mary Shelley is very important, and we will know why. Okay, it's important to have in mind that Romanticism is one of the movements that started in the 19th century. As you know, I suppose you know, that 19th century is very important due to at this time emerged ideas from American and French Revolution, and also Industrial Revolution. Okay, I don't know if you remember all these revolutions in history. All these movements also occurred in Spain, but in England was quicker. And of course, at this time, writers were influenced by these ideas. Okay. Besides, Industrial Revolution produced a new concept of anti-materialism and defense of new social classes. Remember that in this time, new social classes emerged, okay? And it's very present in the arts of that time. In the 18th century, all Western Europe began to industrialize to some extent, but in Britain, the process was more highly accelerated due to there were large deposits of gold, abundant labor supply to mine coal and iron, and factories. Okay, and besides, colonies furnished raw materials and acted as captive markets for manufactured goods. So it also enhanced the development of industrialization in this country. Okay. It's very important to bear in mind that England in 18th century became a society with a marked difference between two spheres of activity, okay, the public and the private. And in these two spheres, it was important the gender, okay. In the public, it means political, civil, and intellectual life. It was a masculine thing, and the private, which was the family care and education of children, was a feminine thing. Okay, so women should devote themselves to private life and not interfere in the public sphere. Okay, women were the guardians of morality, but not of political action. It's very important. Remember, we are going to read a book written by a woman in the Romantic period. Okay. Although you are not reading the original book, you are reading an adaptation, you may find some characteristics of this time in the story. So pay attention to all these things, okay, because it's very, very, very important and interesting. Okay. Characteristics of this period, this literary period, and not only literary, in painting, acting, theaters, it was all more or less the same. Okay, they pay a lot of attention to writers' emotions. Okay, the narrator's emotions, the rationalism. At this time, science was very important. Okay, emphasis on individual experience, personification. Okay, human being is very important. Experimental use of language. It's very common in poetry, but also in novels. Okay, in fact, in the original novel, you can observe a lot of experimental use of language. Okay, I don't know if in this adaptation you can perceive it. I haven't read it yet. I will read the book this tonight. But I think it may conserve some experimental use of language. Well, then celebration of beauty, imagination, and nature. It's very important. Nature is very present in Romantic literature. Rejection of industrialization, as nature is very present in literature. Industrialization is rejected. They think it's very important to preserve nature and take care of environmental issues, because industrialization means exploitation, okay, of these working classes. It means dirty, very crowded places, and that kind of society was rejected by these authors. Okay, idealization of women, children, and rural life. Okay, at this time, the evangelic church was very important, and I don't know if you know or any of you are evangelical, but they are stronger in faith, I think, than Catholics, and all this influence of religion is very present in women. Okay, women must be at home, taking care of her children, taking care of a family, and of course, with industrialization, remember that women incorporated to work to the factories, but women were not paid, or were paid very low salaries, and also children were also working in factories. Okay, so we would say that romantics missed that women who stayed at home, who lived in rural areas, and took care of her children in religious and spiritual way. Okay, and then it's very important mythology. Okay, mythology was very, very important. Greek and Latin mythology. In fact, the book you are reading, Frankenstein, the real name is Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus. Prometheus was a mythological character. Okay, you should search for some information about Prometheus to understand a bit more Frankenstein. Okay, and then social conventions were very important for them. Mary Shelley was a very interesting woman. Okay, I think at this time okay, with all this religious thinking. Mary Shelley was born in London in 1797, and she was the daughter of Mary Wollstonecraft. I don't know if you know Mary Wollstonecraft. Mary Wollstonecraft was the author of Vindication of Rights of Women. I mean, she was a feminist author, one of the first feminist authors in England. However, Wollstonecraft died giving birth to Mary, so she never knew her mother. Okay, so she lived with her father, William Godwin, and William Godwin was also a member of a circle of radical thinkers in England. Okay, so it was a very important man. Then, as a teenager, she met Percy Bysshe Shelley. Percy Bysshe Shelley was a poet. At this time, he was a pupil of William Godwin. And he was married with Harriet, another woman. And at this time, Mary was a teenager. But they fell in love, and Percy abandoned his pregnant wife and ran away together with Mary for a tour of France, Switzerland, and Germany. Okay, Mary escaped her family and Percy, his wife. Okay, and well. She got pregnant, Mary Shelley, but his son died. Mary Shelley had at least 4 or 5 children, and all of them died. It's very important to have it in mind. Only one survived, the last one. Only one. But the rest, all of them died. And died with days. 3-4 days, they died. And it's very important to have it in mind, because when a writer writes a novel or a poem or a piece of literature, this is his or her spirit is in this piece of paper. So you should have in mind all these kind of things. Okay, life of these two people was very difficult. Okay, they had a lot of economic problems, and also apart from the death of all their sons and daughters, Harriet, who was pregnant, and remember that Harriet was the wife of Percy, committed suicide being pregnant of Percy. Okay, so it is important to bear it in mind. The union between Mary and Percy was not only romantic but also literary. Okay, Percy edited Mary's manuscript for Frankenstein. Okay, and is commonly supposed to have written the preface under her name. Okay, there is a very interesting story about the production of this book. It is said that when they both were traveling around Europe, they met Lord Byron. Lord Byron was another writer of the period. It was like a kind of I don't know how Barney Stinson. Do you remember Barney Stinson from How I Met Your Mother? Okay, Lord Byron was a Barney Stinson in the 19th century. Okay, it was like he was always with a lot of women and men, and in parties, private parties, and he was a bohemian. And well, the three were very good friends, and it is said that in one of these private parties of Lord Byron proposed to his two friends, Percy and Mary, to write a Gothic novel, a novel with fear, with obscure themes. So it is said that Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein due to this proposal of Lord Byron. It was like a competition, okay? So they wrote novels, Gothic novels, about this topic. And Frankenstein's was the novel of Mary Shelley, okay? Then she wrote more novels. She wrote Valperga, The Last Man, and Lodore, but the most famous was Frankenstein, okay? Well, what else? Well, another interesting thing, because the life of these two people was very, very interesting, Percy and Mary's. Percy died very, very young. When they were in Italy, Percy was sailing with another friend, and it is said that he drowned, so he died in the sea, and Mary preserved his heart in a cage. So when Mary Shelley died in London in 1851, it is said that she was buried with his husband's heart, and it's an idea, a very romantic idea too, okay, to have it in mind at the time you are reading the book, so you can go deep in the personality of Mary Shelley, okay. And well, then Frankenstein, it's one of the best novels, Gothic novels of the period, and all you have here are the themes Frankenstein, or the themes you can find in Frankenstein: creation, alienation, isolation, crossing boundaries, ambition, injustice, family, natural loss, responsibility, revenge. As I said, I don't know if in this adaptation of the book you can find all of them. I will tell you, because I have to read it. Tonight I will read the book. And for example, creation is at the center of a novel, because Frankenstein was a creation. Okay, how Victor creates a monster. Okay. Then alienation, because it may be possible that Victor creates the monster to end his isolation. Okay, and it is very related to the next theme, isolation, because, for example, Robert Walton with his sister through letters, and Victor Frankenstein with his family, they feel quite isolated from the world. Okay, and Victor is engaged in his experiments, and Robert Walton goes on expeditions where he meets Victor. So all these kind of things are very related to isolation, okay? And crossing boundaries, because Mary Shelley has a very beautifully woven idea of crossing limits in this novel, okay? Through Victor Frankenstein, she explains that humans have certain limits despite grand ambitions. When these limits are crossed, the natural order is destroyed. Okay, so it's very, very interesting and very important to have it in mind. And of course, ambition. Okay. the theme of ambition also runs parallel in the novel, although since the ancient period ambition is associated with negative passion. Okay, here Victor's ambition leads him to create a human deemed as a monster physically. Okay, it proves that ambition is not good when it comes to unnatural directions. The creation of a new life, defying the natural order of life and death, is clearly an incorrect ambition. Okay. And then, injustice, because Mary Shelley has demonstrated this theme in two ways. Okay. The first is in Justine's trial in the court on the accusation of murdering William. Okay. And the second example of injustice is when the creature requests for a companion Victor denies. Okay, and so it's a very, very important theme. And also responsibility and family. Yes, injustice was related to responsibility. It doesn't matter. When we talk about family in this novel, is due to the parental responsibility, okay, which is another theme. His father, Alphonse Frankenstein, has done his best to educate him in the top university to study science, okay, and Victor wholeheartedly completes his education which shows his good upbringing. However, when Victor creates the creature, he forgets to give his master the moral and social education about how to live and behave in a society. Maybe because Victor was a man and he didn't know how to do it. Okay, and of course revenge. Okay, these are very important topics and themes in Frankenstein. I hope this book is good for you. Okay, I think it's very easy to read and you will enjoy it. So good luck with it, and if you have any doubt you can write to me and I'll try to solve it. Okay, so see you.